Thank you so much, Fatima. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. It is a great honor and pleasure for me to join Alex Dmitriev as co-chair of tonight's very special evening. I want to thank Alex and his colleagues from GE, all of the members of the host committee, the generous sponsors and donors, the members of the board, and the organizers of this successful event. In recognition of the 45th anniversary milestone, as well as this historical moment, you, all of you, collectively, raised a record amount tonight for the work of the National Women's Law Center. Congratulations. I also want to congratulate Fatima Gross-Graves, the center's new president and CEO. Thank you for taking on this critical assignment and leading this incredible team at this critical time. And didn't my home senator bring it in tonight? You know, in a democracy, sometimes for the better and sometimes not, we get the government we deserve. For the better, we deserve the spirit, the heat, the strength, and the resolve of Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts and for all of us in the United States Senate. I have been thinking a lot lately of how our democracy depends on unwritten rules. Rules about courtesy and restraint and respect and duty. In a world where bully-style leadership and intolerance are on the rise, in our own reality TV culture, where a lack of decorum is entertainment, one begins to appreciate that democratic institutions are fragile things. And that's good. It's good that so many of us are waking up to that ancient truth that democratic institutions and democracy itself are fragile things. We've been treating our democracy for a long time as if it could tolerate relentless abuse without breaking. And the good thing about right now is that a lot of us are realizing that that's got to stop. The transcendent aspirations of equality, opportunity, freedom, and fair play depend on a kind of civic faith. We first have to believe these values are in fact valuable. And then, as citizens in the fullest sense of the term, we have to act. Democracy works when somebody has faith in our democratic values and then says to herself, now, what am I going to do about it? There's a story you may know about a slave woman named Elizabeth Freeman. Mumbet, she was called. Mumbet served a master in western Massachusetts who was inflamed by the ideas of the Enlightenment. He would gather around his table other men of learning and influence and talk about the concepts of freedom and fundamental human dignity. Night after night, over their supper and their wine, they talked and became more and more caught up in the movement toward the American Revolution and in the later efforts to frame the Massachusetts Constitution, the forerunner of and the model for the United States Constitution many years later. And all the while, Mumbet was listening. When the Massachusetts Constitution was enacted, she asked herself, what about me? With all these declarations of transcendent human rights, she wondered what she could and should do about it. She is quoted as saying, anytime when I was a slave, if I had been offered 1 minute's freedom and told that at the end of that minute I would have to die, I would have taken it, just to stand 1 minute a free woman on God's earth. Mumbet got herself a lawyer, one brave enough, one with enough faith in our civic values to test their truth in the Massachusetts courts. And in 1781, 82 years before the Emancipation Proclamation, she won her freedom and ended slavery in Massachusetts. And of course, for 45 years, that's what the National Women's Law Center has been all about. That's what Marcia Greenberger and Duffy Campbell have been all about. From defending the right for a woman to manage her own health decisions, to our work together to open the Virginia Military Institute and the Citadel to women, to the Affordable Care Act, and through many other victories and struggles we'll hear more about in a minute, they have kept faith with America's highest and best civic values, and then stood up in courtrooms and boardrooms and cabinet rooms and given those values life. Which brings me back to where I started. Democratic values and institutions are fragile things. They inspire us and encourage us, but they don't mean a thing unless somebody stands up for them and acts. That is the duty, ultimately, of every citizen. And that has been the life's work of two of America's exemplary citizens, Marcia Greenberger and Duffy Campbell. And so, on behalf of a nation of better off women and girls, and all of us who have kept our civic faith, let us thank them and congratulate Marcia and Duffy.
Marcia was an anomaly in 1972 when she began the Women's Rights Project. To go into a room of lawyers, she was the only skirt in the room. Sex discrimination was pervasive. It was deeply embedded in our laws.
There were jobs for women and jobs for men.
Women couldn't have their own bank accounts. Most universities and colleges were single-sex.
To discuss the concept of women's equal rights was not really a matter for polite society.
Marcia and Duffy are result-oriented. They are committed like a laser. They are focused.
They were strategically brilliant.
They really invented what it means to be an advocate for women's legal rights.
A very special area that Marcia and Duffy focused on were women's economic rights and security. Most of the people living in poverty are mothers with children. And particularly, Duffy was one of the first people really to focus on this as a women's rights issue.
Whether it's equal pay or childcare or access to health care and birth control, these are core issues that the center has worked on for decades. And without Marcia and Duffy and the National Women's Law Center, so many of the rights that we have, we wouldn't.
Marcia and Duffy have established the right to be free of sexual harassment in the classroom, on the college campus, in the workplace.
The idea that all of us need to be included. You know, that we shouldn't all have to be 6 feet tall and our skin doesn't have to be white.
They used the whole panoply of lawyerly skills to work in Congress, work with policymakers in the White House, in a grassroots work. And of course, that's above and beyond litigation.
They've built this incredible legacy. They've opened the doors for women and girls across the country.
They have created the preeminent women's legal advocacy organization in the nation.
Everything the center has been fighting for, civil rights for women, is rights of human dignity, of equality, of fundamental fairness.
They really led a revolution that changed the society in profound ways for women and girls.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so very, very much. Thank you to the extraordinary Deval Patrick for that incredible tribute, and to all who have worked so hard to put together this thrilling evening, which included the tough job of hiding some of it from Duffy and me. 45 years ago, a pioneering public interest law firm, the Center for Law and Social Policy, faced an uprising. The female administrative staff and law student interns presented the young male founders with a list of demands. They wanted to hire women lawyers, work on women's rights, receive better pay reflecting their skills, and no more serving coffee. Those guys listened and acted, with the occasional slippage on the coffee. By then, I'd seen my share of obstacles to overcome. Growing up in the 50s, one of only 10 women in my law school class, and the first woman associate at a Washington tax firm, Kaplan and Drysdale, at a time, yes, at a time when many firms wouldn't hire women at all. I was in the right place at the right time. The Center for Law and Social Policy hired me to develop the work on women's rights. My first assignment, to write a memo on whether there was enough work on women's rights to keep a lawyer busy full-time. 1972. Let's remember, it was an understandable question. Before 1972, there weren't many laws to work with, but momentum was growing. Ruth Bader Ginsburg had just started a women's rights project at the ACLU. And just the year before, she'd won the first Supreme Court case ever to strike down a statute for denying women equal protection of the law, ever. And Congress began in earnest to pass a series of laws banning sex discrimination, a stronger Title VII to better protect women at work, Title IX to protect women and girls at school, and more. Once word got out that we were open for business, requests for our help started pouring in. Everyone agreed there was no need to write that memo, and we were launched. We grew into the National Women's Law Center, and we never looked back. I'm in awe of those young women who understood the power of standing together. They, as well as the male lawyers who supported them and our women's rights work from the start, epitomize the women's movement and its values, values the center has championed ever since. And it's great to have some of those colleagues here tonight. Since then, the National Women's Law Center, working with our partners, has won historic victories. Securing child care for millions of families, although, as Elizabeth Warren so powerfully said, how much more to go on that front. The Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, making Title IX strong in the classroom and on the playing fields, to name a few. But we've also learned, unfortunately, repeatedly, that hard-won gains can never be taken for granted. We've had painful setbacks, the betrayal of Anita Hill, devastating cuts to programs that support those most in need, and relentless attacks on abortion rights. But every time the going gets tough, we get tougher. To me, nothing reflects that reality more than our 45 years of work on Title IX. In 1972, many thought the idea that young women could take shop classes or play sports was ridiculous, let alone that they could study engineering. We worked to make sure Title IX opened those doors, but we faced constant attacks. And in 1984, a 5-4 Supreme Court decision devastated the effectiveness of Title IX and other civil rights laws. We got to work again. A highlight of my life was walking the halls of Congress with Billie Jean King to right this wrong and watching her work her magic. After a 3-year, huge coalition effort, we passed the Civil Rights Restoration Act. So we're not daunted by this president, or Betsy DeVos, or any of the battles ahead. Yes, these are difficult times, but now is when we all step up and demonstrate our determination and our power. To paraphrase the nation's first Black Congresswoman and presidential candidate Shirley Chisholm, we don't measure America only by its achievement, but also by its potential. When I look at this room, I see this potential in each of you. I know that we will push back and push forward, that we will remember these days with pride. So let me close by saying thank you. Thank you to my husband, Michael, who has been my greatest source of support since we met in our first year of law school. All right, I'm going to say it, just a short 50 years ago. To my daughters, Sarah and Annie, my sons-in-law, Matt and Phil, and my 4 amazing grandkids who are all here tonight. Toby, Eden, Eliza, and Teddy. Thank you to my principled, dedicated, and ultimately utterly brilliant partner, Duffy. As co-president, you helped me become a stronger leader, and as my friend, you helped me become a stronger person. And to Fatima, what great joy, satisfaction, and confidence to know that you are at the helm with the awesome center staff and board. Thank you to the heroes who inspire me, like Billie Jean King and Anita Hill and Hillary Clinton. She shattered so many glass ceilings, including as, and it's amazing to say, the first woman to win the popular vote for President of the United States. And she did it by 3 million votes. I want to thank everyone who has supported us all these years, and for the wonderful Legacy Fund. I can't wait to see the amazing work that I know it will inspire. And thank you to my colleagues and my compatriots, many in the room tonight, who have become my dearest friends. We've shared a common purpose, and we've forged unbreakable bonds. Leading this organization has been a great honor. I am forever grateful that I was lucky enough to have the chance. Thank you.
I decided I wanted to become a lawyer when I was 12 years old. It was the year after the Supreme Court's decision in Brown v. Board of Education, and I believed the law could be a powerful agent of social change. I wrote a school essay describing my career choice, and I was thrilled when my teacher asked me to read my essay aloud, until I realized that she wasn't impressed, but rather surprised a girl would have such aspirations. That was the day I became a feminist. So how great it was to join Marcia at the Center for Law and Social Policy to work on women's rights and to establish with her and others the National Women's Law Center. From the beginning, we addressed a broad range of issues that affect women and their families, especially those who have low income or who face racial or other forms of discrimination. We stopped states from requiring women to be sterilized to receive public assistance. We improved Social Security for women and expanded tax benefits for single heads of households and families with childcare expenses. We opened all military positions to women. And much, much more. We didn't do any of this alone. We were always part of something larger, a movement with many heroes on the front lines. Our partnerships with individuals and organizations have been critical to our success and to our strength. Today, the Center is part of a vibrant movement with unprecedented breadth and reach. As Elizabeth Warren so aptly described, this year's Women's March was the single largest day of protest in American history. Together, we march to end sexism, racism, poverty, and discrimination on the basis of religion, immigrant status, disability, sexual orientation, and gender identity, to name just a few. The Center is ready for the challenges of this broad agenda. We see it in Fatima's strong and bold leadership, the many talents of the Center's tremendous staff, and the robust enthusiasm of the Center's board and millions of allies, including all of you in this room. We see it in the passion and success of the Center's defense of the Affordable Care Act. We see it in the Center's work to increase, not cut, federal and state funding for programs critical to women and their families. We see it in the Center's work with an unprecedented number of volunteers, using their skills and their talents to uphold the rule of law, not the law of rulers. So even in this time of struggle, I am heartened. Yes, we have many challenges, but we can meet them and we can beat them. We are fighting back and we are pushing forward, blazing new trails along the way. I'm tremendously proud of the Center's 45 years of accomplishments. But I know they are just the opening salvo of what is yet to come. And I'm so honored by and thrilled about the Legacy Fund and all that the future will bring. I thank the Center's incredible staff and board for this wonderful evening and for all of our work together. I've relied so much on your expertise, and I cherish the friendships we've made. I thank the countless individuals and groups I'm so proud to call my colleagues, many of whom are here tonight. It's been an honor to stand shoulder to shoulder with you in the fight for justice. I thank my brilliant husband, Michael Trister, for his love and support, and for the many pro bono hours of work he has given the Center, and I think many of you in this room, and our cause. I thank our children, Karen and Noah, our son-in-law, Pete, and our unbelievable grandchildren, Jeremy and Mara, for all the joy they've brought to our lives. It's wonderful to have you all here with me and us tonight. I thank you, Marcia, my friend, my sister. Your extraordinary dedication, warmth, and love have made each day its own reward. And you have made our journey together so much more than my 12-year-old self could ever have imagined. My husband calls Marcia my true partner. What's true is that ours is a partnership for the ages, built on the pursuit of timeless goals: opportunity, equality, and justice. To borrow and update the words of my favorite suffragist, Inez Milholland, liberty must be fought for, and women of the nation and men, this is the time to fight. Thank you.